Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our second day of our Fiqh intensive. Today we are continuing with Tahara, purification. Yesterday we started with a brief introduction into Islamic law, into Fiqh. We talked about the sources of Islamic law. We talked about the different categories of actions, that every single action, every single deed, anything that you can do is categorized as either fard, wajib, sunnah, mandub, which mean the same thing, mubah, which is a neutral category, makruh, which is disliked, and then makruh tahrimi and haram, which are the same thing, which means prohibited. So every single action can be categorized in one of these categories. And then we started to deal with tahara itself, beginning with water. What types of water can we use? We looked at a list which was not an exhaustive list, but just a list as an example of different types of waters that we can use. Some of them being ocean water. Although ocean water is salty, it is perfectly fine to use for wudu and purification. We talked about rainwater, melted snow or hail. These things can be used for purification, for tahara. Now, today we will actually, we also did one more masala, and that is if something impure mixes with the water versus if something pure mixes with the water, what are the outcomes? And we broke that down, that if something impure mixes with the water and any of the three qualities of the water changes, then that water cannot be used. If none of the three qualities change, and this is an impure substance mixing with that water, we said that you are to look at the quantity of the water at that point. If it is a small quantity of water, like a swimming pool or something of this sort, then you cannot use it, even if none of the qualities changed. We said the qualities of water are the color, the taste, and the smell. If it is a large quantity of water and nothing has changed after the mixing of an impure substance, you can use that water for wudu and for purification. On the other hand, if something pure mixes with the water, this is like dirt. If you remember, we said there's a difference between impure and dirty, right? If somebody rolls around in the dirt, they can be considered dirty, but they're not necessarily impure in the sense that they cannot pray, in the sense that they have some sort of impurity on them that prevents them from prayer, that requires them to purify themselves. Now, when you're dirty, you're required to clean yourself, but it doesn't restrict you from prayer. It doesn't restrict you from acts of worship. So we said if something pure mixes with the water, this can be something like a soap bar, it can be dirt, something that is not considered impure, mixes with the water. In this case, if none of the qualities change, obviously you can use it. If some of the qualities change, then we are to look at how much the qualities change. If it is some light effect to that water and it's still mainly water for the most part, you can use it. If it's drastically changed, then you can no longer use it, and this is when it's mixed with a pure substance. So that is all we covered for our last session yesterday. Today we'll continue from where we left off. We'll delve into some new issues, and then inshallah tomorrow and the day after we will likely, like I mentioned, we'll try to finish the entire intensive Monday to Thursday. If not, we still have Friday as a backup day. As we mentioned, the course will be Monday to Friday, but Friday is going to be just in case if we're not able to finish it, and that will depend on the amount of time we spend, the amount of questions that come within these intensives while we're going through the different scenarios. So let's begin with a screen share. Please let me know when you can see my screen. Somebody can let me know in the chat. All right, Jazakallah khair. Now, we did this yesterday. We are on number 6. So this is where we are now. الماء المستعمل. الماء المستعمل, this is water that has already been used to perform wudu. So now this is water that is used to perform wudu. Like I said, a lot of these scenarios that we're doing right now, they are not very common in the sense that for the most part, when we do wudu, we just go to the sink in the bathroom and do wudu there. These don't really come across our mind. But in the situation where we are, camping, or where you don't have access to that normal lifestyle, that normal water availability through our sink, then these come about. Or, for example, if we're out and about, we're at a beach, right? What happens if the water is mixed with something impure and things like this? Same thing with swimming pool, same thing with a pond or whatnot. So al-ma' al-musta'mal, this is dealing with water that has been used to do wudu. This is not water that is unused. So, for example, if somebody has a bucket of water and they are slightly pouring it, right? So they're pouring it over the ground, over outside, and I'm using the water they are pouring to do wudu, right? When I'm done, whatever is remaining in the bucket is not what this is talking about. This is talking about what I use to do wudu. So the water that goes on my limbs and falls off of my limbs. So the same scenario, but let's say under, or instead of that water just falling to the ground, there's a second bucket placed under where it would fall. So I'm doing wudu, and one bucket is pouring the water, right? And the wudu water that's falling off my face, off my limbs, is falling into this bucket number 2. The water in bucket number 2 is al-ma al-musta'mal. It's considered used water for wudu. Bucket number 1, which was the bucket that's pouring, that's perfectly fine. That's not used water for wudu. That water is the ruling for that water is just like the water that's in your sink, right? It's unused water, or the previously discussed types of water. So if nothing impure mixes and all of that stuff, so that's good to go. This second bucket that the water off of my limbs fell into, that is known as al-ma' al-musta'mal, or the water that would go away in your sink or down the drain, right? Obviously, we don't have access to it, but in the case that you did have access to it, that used wudu water, can you use it for wudu again? That is the question here. So the first thing that we are talking about is if any of the 3 qualities of that water has been changed. I think it should be has been changed. You cannot use it, right? So if any of the 3 qualities of that water has been changed, you cannot use it for wudu. And this is obviously the because it's a smaller amount of water and one of the qualities has been changed. Now, typically when you're doing wudu, you're likely, for the most case, not going to have some sort of major impurity on the limbs that you are doing wudu with. But if in case something mixes like that, you can't use it, or the qualities of that water has changed, you can't use it. In the case that the qualities of that water has not been changed, not mixed with something impure, what's the situation here? In this case, there are 2 major opinions. The first is you cannot use that water, right? And I wrote here that it's better not to use it. Some say resort to it only as a last resource. So here, there are 2 major opinions, right? If the water is clean, if nothing's mixed with it, the first is you cannot use it. This is the opinion of the Hanafis. The other opinion that's there is that you can use it. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this even a thing? It is a thing because if this is the only remaining water that you have, the question would be, do you use this water or do you resort to tayammum, right? Which one do you have to do? For those that say this is not a water that is usable for wudu, would say you automatically go to tayammum. For those that say no, this is usable, but last resort, you have to use this and you cannot do tayammum, right? So this is where it really makes a difference. Again, it is not a scenario or situation you are coming across for the most part. Like I mentioned that, or I don't even think I mentioned this, but these notes are structured based on a typical fiqh book. So a typical chapter of Tahara in the book of Islamic law, in the book of Fiqh, would go through these. Now, this is obviously a summarized version of those things, and a lot of the details of Kitab al-Tahara I left out, such as situations dealing with well water, right? There's entire discussions on what if this type of animal dies, what if the animal size is this, what if this. Obviously, for the most part, we are not using well water or concerned with the animals that fall in a well. So a lot of that I took out. And some of this even is not relevant for the most part for most people. However, you can encounter these situations once in a while. So, as a matter of precaution in this intensive, we are going through all of these. So these are the two opinions on it. You can't use it, you can use it, but as a last resource. Number 7, water that saliva has mixed with. So this is water that someone or something has drank from. Let's use this example of a large jug, right? Someone or something drank from this jug, right? Some of the saliva, backwashed into that water. Very light, but some of it did. Can you use this water or not? Number 1, if the individual that drank from that jug is a human being, so it's human saliva, then you can use it, right? This is regardless if that person is Muslim or non-Muslim, you can use it. Human saliva is considered pure. Obviously, if that person just drank alcohol or something impure, then that's a different situation. But in a normal scenario, if somebody just drank from a jug of water, that water is still considered pure for purposes of purification. So you can use it for wudu if need be. Number 2, if an animal that is halal to eat, like a chicken, that is halal to eat, drank from it, it doesn't affect the water either. So, a situation would be there's a pond or something like this, and some chickens go and drink from it. Can you use that for wudu? Yes, it doesn't make that water impure. Number 3, if the animal is not halal to eat, but it's not an impure animal. Impure animals would be like a dog, for example. The saliva of a dog is considered impure. A pig, for example, would be considered impure. So this is an animal that is not halal to eat, that you can't eat, but it's not considered an impure animal. This water should be avoided, but it's allowed to be used as a last resort. So you should avoid it for wudu and use it as a last resort. Number 4, if the animal is impure, then you can't use that water, right? If the animal is impure, you can't use that water. Now, you also would apply, let's say a dog drank from the ocean, right? Which ruling would you apply here now? Would you say you can't use this water, or what would you do? Go ahead, you can type it in the chat. What would be the situation? Let's take number 4 here. We said if an animal is impure and the saliva mixes with the water, you can't use that water, right? But how would you break this down? How do I figure this out? If an animal, let's say you have a dog, it drank from a jug, right? The jug is 3 gallons. It drank from the jug, versus a dog that drank from the ocean. In both of these situations, can you not use it? How do we determine this? And this is something you learned if you attended yesterday. So how do we break this down? Let's start with number 1. You can type it in or you can unmute yourself. Let's start with number 1. Okay, I have somebody answering already. Quantity of water. If it's a small body of water, this rule applies. Very good. So we would use the breakdown we learned yesterday, right? So if you're at a beach and the dog goes and drinks from the water, remember yesterday's thing, let's apply it systematically. Something impure, dog saliva is impure. Something impure mixes with the body of water. If any of the qualities change, automatically that's out. So, I really doubt one of the qualities will change if a dog just licks water, especially definitely not in the ocean, but even in a 3-gallon jug, it's not likely going to change the quality of the water. So then you would apply scenario number 2. None of the qualities changed. Then you go to the quantity, right? For the small jug, it's a small quantity. Even if none of the qualities change, you cannot use it. That's how we determine our answer. The dog licked that water from that 3-gallon jug, you cannot use it. the beach, right? None of the qualities change. The quantity is a very large quantity of water, therefore you can use it. So if a dog licks the water at a beach, you can use it for wudu. Right? See how all of these, they're all going to be connected, and you should be able to refer back to them to be able to break down the situation and figure out whether you can use that water or not. All right. The next mas'ala, there are some questions people are sending. I'll do the questions towards the end, inshallah. The next mas'ala, can you use a container made from gold or silver to do wudu? So, for those that are aware, some might be aware, some might not. You cannot use utensils that are made of gold and silver. It's prohibited through a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if your cup, for example, is made of pure gold, you cannot use it. Now, this is not the color gold or silver. This is referring to, actual gold cups or actual gold utensils. Same thing with silver. Now, there are certain percentages that are allowed, right? So, for example, if it's very minor or done for repairing things, these are discussions that come in come in books of fiqh. But again, this is a very entry level class. We're not going into the very minor details of if somebody fixes a cup with gold, can you use that cup or not? That's not really relevant to our basic discussion here. Generally, you can't use it. Pure gold cups or pure gold utensils. However, can you use these things for doing wudu, right? The answer is yes. You can use it for wudu, but you can't eat it. You can't use it for eating and drinking. So if you have a jug that's made of pure gold or something like this, or your sink, the faucet, there you go. The faucet is made of gold or something like this. You can that won't affect your wudu. You can use it for wudu. All right. Now we are changing topics slightly. We are talking about issues that deal with using the bathroom. Number 9 is what we will start with. Let me see. Okay. Number 9, what should you use to clean yourself after using the bathroom? So this is talking about istinja, which is cleaning yourself, specifically with water, or mainly with water, after using the bathroom. What should you use to clean yourself? Number 1, water. This should be the first option, if possible. If you have access to water, then water should be the first thing you use to clean yourself after using the bathroom. It is the best way to purify yourself in terms of removing any impurities that might remain on your skin, right? The idea is to remove every impurity that remains on your skin so that you are able to pray, that it doesn't affect your prayer. So if water is available, this is your first option. If water is not available, if you don't have access to water, then you can use toilet paper. This should be available for the most part. You can use that to purify yourself. You would have to use enough to make sure that there's no najasa on you, so that you can pray, that you can do things. So if you use toilet paper, it doesn't mean that you cannot pray. It doesn't mean that you're not able to, or that you're considered impure until you shower or anything like this, right? Water is step 1. If you don't have it, you move on to toilet paper. You can purify yourself with toilet paper to the best of your ability. Make sure najasa is removed. To your knowledge, if najasa is removed, you can pray, you can do everything that you can normally do when you wash yourself with water. If you don't have toilet paper or access to toilet paper, okay, this is not the updated version. I changed this slightly here. Say, for example, you're camping. You can use leaves or smaller flat surfaced rocks or things like this. So anything that you can find to remove impurity from your body. Now, obviously, this is not the ideal situation to use leaves or flat rocks or whatnot to remove impurities, but this is all the way down the end. If you don't have toilet paper, you don't have water, you don't have any way to remove impurity that is the normal way of removing impurities from yourself, then you can resort to these things like leaves or whatnot. Pretty much you can use anything that doesn't come under the next list that we will talk about. Um, Now, using toilet paper and water is the best and most recommended way. This is because both of these together will ensure that you don't have any impurities on yourself. So this is the most recommended way to do istinja, that you use everything at your ability to remove impurities from you. This is the list of things that you cannot use to clean yourself. So basically anything that doesn't fall under this list, you can use it after that hierarchy, meaning water first, then toilet paper, then anything else that doesn't fall under this list. Now, this list is not exhaustive, number one, and number two, the specific things that are mentioned aren't allowed to be used, plus things that resemble it or fall into that category for the same purpose. So number one, anything that could be useful or beneficial to someone. Um, you know, for like money, for example. These are things that you shouldn't use to clean yourself, because this is something that's beneficial, that's useful. Um, or ripping apart a book or something like this. Number two, food, right? You shouldn't use food to clean yourself. Now, a lot of these are pretty obvious, but they're still mentioned. Usually, the books of fiqh, they will cover every small detail, even if, and this is just like I said, a summarized version of it. Even if it's such a minor detail that everybody would know it, it would still mention it, so that later on people can't say, well, this is not mentioned, maybe this is a debatable topic. They would mention everything, A to Z. Number three, bones, right? This is considered disrespectful, whether it be animal bones or human bones. So you can't use it to clean yourself. Number four, coal, right? This is mainly because, and this is like a category type of item, it's because it will, if you use coal, if you touch coal, right, you'll notice it'll just make your entire hand dirty. The same thing, if you try to use it to clean yourself, it's going to do the opposite. So anything that would produce the opposite of what you are intending, you cannot use it. Number five, glass, or anything that could be dangerous, anything that can cause harm. You shouldn't use it. So as I mentioned, you can use leaves. Let's say this leaf is poison ivy, or it has thorns, right? Obviously, you don't want to use that. That's going to bring about harm to you. Number six, anything impure that goes away from the purpose. You're trying to purify yourself. You cannot purify yourself by using something that is impure in itself. And this last note here is you should not use your right hand to clean yourself. Generally speaking, the right hand is reserved for eating, for cleaner things. The left hand is reserved for purification purposes. However, if somebody is not able to use their right hand, for example, for that, because they're left-handed and they're strongly left-handed, then there's no ithm, there's no sin in this aspect. So it's more so of a prophetic sunnah, of a recommendation, that if a person can use their right hand, you should use your right hand for eating and things like this. If a person can use their left hand for istinja and things like this, they should do it for that, and they should avoid the opposite hands for those purposes. But if a person is not able to, because they are left-handed, then it's perfectly fine, for example, to eat with your left hand if you are left-handed and it's difficult to eat with your right hand. And same thing when it comes to istinja and these things. So this would be determined on a person-to-person basis, depending on the person's situation. Number 11. Avoid facing the qibla. So to understand this discussion is usually prior to toilets being a permanent position or a permanent fixed seat. This is when people would just go out, use the bathroom. But nowadays, toilets are usually fixed in one spot. So if we can, we should avoid, if and whenever we can, we should avoid facing the qibla or our back towards the qibla while using the bathroom. Again, if possible. If your toilet's already fixed, what you can do is you can slightly adjust your position. But if your toilet is fixed, it's not sinful or anything like this. If you are outside and you know which way qibla is, just avoid facing the qibla when you're using the bathroom. places and ways in which one should not relieve, which you should not relieve yourself. So how, where and how, um, kind of what places to avoid when using the bathroom, and the positions to avoid. Number one, in still water, water that does not move. You do not want to relieve yourself in a small pond. This would make the pond najas, right? We don't want to make the pond najas. So any water that is still water, it's not considered a good place to use the bathroom. If a place is like a river, or the ocean, these waters are considered self-purified. That they because they're moving water, they continuously purify themselves. Non-moving water, like a pond or a swimming pool or something like this, is not self-purified water. It would need to be purified if najasa goes in it. Under the shade or somewhere where people might rest. Now, this is something that brings benefit to people. Let's say um, there's a walking way. This, or that's actually the next thing that's written as well. But anywhere where somebody would sit. So if there's a very nice tree, people usually go sit under it, read a book or whatnot, and then you go and relieve yourself right under that tree, right? That's going to cause harm to people that might rest there, that might sit there, that might use and benefit from that place, from its shade, from that area. So it is not recommended to relieve yourself there, because these things cause harm to other people. Notice how the fiqh itself tries to remove any harm. This is one of the um, qawaid, one of the principles of Islamic law, that you want to remove harm. You don't want to increase harm. You want to remove any possible harm. So here you want to remove any harm. When you're trying to relieve yourself, avoid places that will harm people. Number three, on a pathway that people might walk through, kind of the same reasoning, right? People are frequently using that pathway. You don't want to ruin that pathway with najasa. And then number four, standing up if avoidable. So if you can avoid standing up, you should avoid standing up. Standing up and relieving yourself is considered one of the two. It's either considered makruh, which is disliked, not makruh tahrimi, not the one that's close to haram, makruh tanzihi, so disliked. You're not sinful if you stand up and use the bathroom. This is, contrary to some people's popular belief that you cannot, or it's not permissible to use the bathroom standing up. It's either khilaf al-awla, which means against what is better to do, or meaning it's not better to do that, or it's makruh, disliked, but it's not haram, it's not impermissible, and it's not sinful. What becomes sinful is if the water splashes on you, and then that can ruin your prayer. It creates najasa on you and things like this. So for that reason, people say it's not better to, it's better to avoid it if possible, because it increases the chances of that najasa splashing on you. However, it is not haram. If one relieves themselves standing up, it does not mean that they cannot pray until they shower. As long as they avoided the najasa and avoided the backsplash as much as possible, they can still pray after they do wudu and purify themselves. So standing up, if avoidable, this is something that you should avoid if possible. Okay, the next one, issues dealing with personal hygiene. If you have any questions until this point, feel free to type it in. And as we're going through this, we'll reserve 10 minutes or so at the end to go through the Q&A. But hopefully this is pretty clear and to the point. Like I said, these notes that I compiled, I just kind of put the conclusions out there from the books of fiqh. So issues dealing with personal hygiene. The first thing that we're going to start with is the fitra, natural dispositions. As you are aware, some religions do not allow a person to remove certain hairs from their body. Islam does the opposite. It ensures a type of personal hygiene that a person has to continue its upkeep, right? And these things include, number one, for males to be circumcised. Number two, removing armpit hair. Number three, removing pubic hair. Number 4, trimming your mustache. Number 5, cutting your nails. These are things that you have to do, aside from number 1, on a continuous basis whenever it exceeds its amount. Now, there are different traditions saying that it is not allowed for you to go past 40 days or whatnot without trimming these things, but this would depend on the individual. Some people, for example, they won't their hair growth is a lot slower, right? Versus some people, their hair growth is a lot faster. If your hair growth is a lot faster, you need to be doing it a lot quicker. A lot of these things are sunnah to do on a weekly basis, before Jum'ah and things like this, to go through your personal hygiene and make sure you are well put together. Even though a lot of these things are not outwardly, it still means it still is something that a person should be well put together in terms of cutting your nails on a weekly basis, trimming your mustache. Trimming your mustache, it is basically your mustache should not dangle in your drink. So if you were to drink something, right, and your mustache is so long that the hairs of your mustache is going way beyond your lips and it's dangling in your drink, right, it's covering your lip and things like this, this is where you need to trim it. So it needs to be cut like that. You don't need to shave it or trim it to the lowest point, but it needs to be upkept, that it's not going and mixing with the things you are drinking or whatnot. All right. We're still on personal hygiene. The next thing is brushing your teeth and using a miswak. So miswak is a natural toothbrush that was used by the Prophet ﷺ. It's not, I guess, made from, but it comes from the arak tree, and it is again a specific tree. It doesn't come from every single tree. It is a piece of that tree that you can use to clean your mouth, that you can use to clean your teeth. The miswak itself, there's a discussion which part is sunnah, but just to break it down in the most simple way, there are two sunnahs here. Number 1, the sunnah of brushing or cleaning your mouth, brushing your teeth and cleaning your mouth. This is a separate sunnah. And the sunnah of specifically using the miswak as well, right? So we can narrow it down to these two things. Both of these are sunnah. So brushing your teeth, right, like how we do it in the morning, hopefully, and in the evenings, what's it called? And however many times your dentist is recommending you to brush your teeth, but you're brushing your teeth, that act in itself, if done with the intention of cleaning your mouth to keep up with your hygiene, is sunnah. If you do it with that intention, you get reward for brushing your teeth. And then the second sunnah that we have here is using the miswak itself. That is also rewarding if done with that intention of using the miswak, the prophetic sunnah. So there's two individual sunnahs. It's not one combined sunnah. There's two individual sunnahs here. So miswak is this natural toothbrush. It is sunnah to use it, the miswak itself, at all times of the day. Anytime you feel that your breath is unpleasant, that you need to brush your teeth, you can use the miswak. It's highly recommended at certain times. When you wake up, and this is, you can include this in brushing your teeth. A very quick disclaimer: when if you want to replace every time that a person uses a miswak with brushing your teeth, it might not be the best thing to use toothpaste each time. For example, every single time you're doing wudu, every single time, waking up, before prayer, this and that, you'll be using toothpaste like 10 to 20 times. Consult your dentist if needed. But when you're using the miswak, it is a natural toothbrush. So if you're using your toothbrush instead of the miswak because you don't have a miswak or for whatever reason, and you're doing this, you can use it without the toothpaste just to clean your mouth, and you get the same reward as well. So it's recommended to use at any time. It's sunnah to use at any time, but it's highly recommended during these times. When you wake up, when you're performing wudu, right? When you're performing wudu after you rinse your mouth, to use the miswak. When you enter the masjid or your home, right? So you're entering the masjid, your home. Anytime you're going to the masjid, it's always a kind of a sunnah to be put together, to be clean, right? So here, entering the masjid, you're using the miswak because you want to go in the masjid with a clean mouth. Before prayer itself, before reciting Quran, this is from the adab, from the respect of the Quran itself. Every time your breath does not smell pleasant, you can use the miswak, and it's highly recommended to use the miswak, or highly recommended to clean your teeth or brush your teeth. If you brush your teeth with a regular toothbrush at these times, you're also fulfilling the sunnah of brushing and cleaning. This is what we broke down and we discussed. All right, so we will stop here at this mas'ala. We're going to continue from number 15 tomorrow, inshallah. Let's do some Q&A. I think the way that we are going tomorrow is what, Wednesday? I don't know. I guess we'll see tomorrow if we can finish by Thursday or not. If not, it's not a big deal. We're going to do it on Friday, inshallah. All right, so let's do some Q&A. Let me stop the live stream and then we'll get into the Q&A.